politicians, whose first priority was to re-establish a centralized state power. After every revolutionary uprising, usually won at a heavy cost for ordinary populations, the new rulers had no hesitation in applying violence and terror, a secret police, and a professional army to maintain their control. For anarchists, the state itself is the enemy, and they have applied the same interpretation to the outcome of every revolution of the 19th and 20th centuries. This is not merely because every state keeps a watchful and sometimes punitive eye on its dissidents, but because every state protects the privileges of the powerful. The mainstream of anarchist propaganda for more than a century has been anarchist communism, which argues that property in land, natural resources, and the means of production should be held in mutual control by local communities, federating for innumerable joint purposes with other communes. It differs from state socialism in opposing the concept of any central authority. Some anarchists prefer to distinguish between anarchist communism and collectivist anarchism in order to stress the obviously desirable freedom of an individual or family to possess the resources needed for living, while not implying the right to own the resources needed by others. Anarcho-syndicalism puts its emphasis on the organized industrial workers who could, through a social general strike, expropriate the possessors of capital and thus engineer a workers' takeover of industry and administration. There are, unsurprisingly, several traditions of individualist anarchism, one of them deriving from the conscious egoism of the German writer Max Stirner, 1806 through 1856, and another from a remarkable series of 19th-century American figures, who argued that in protecting our own autonomy and associating with others for common advantages, we are promoting the good of all. These thinkers differed from free-market liberals in their absolute mistrust of American capitalism and in their emphasis on mutualism. In the late 20th century, the word libertarian, which people holding such a viewpoint had previously used as an alternative to the word anarchist, was appropriated by a new group of American thinkers, who are discussed in Chapter 7. Pacifist anarchism follows both from the anti-militarism that accompanies rejection of the state, with its ultimate dependence on armed forces, and from the conviction that any morally viable human society depends upon the uncoerced goodwill of its members. These and other threads of anarchist thought have different emphases. What links them all is their rejection of external authority, whether that of the state, the employer, or the hierarchies of administration and of established institutions like the school and the church. The same is true of more recently emerging varieties of anarchist propaganda, green anarchism and anarcho-feminism. Like those who believe that animal liberation is an aspect of human liberation, they claim that the only ideology consistent with their aims is anarchism. It is customary to relate the anarchist tradition to four major thinkers and writers. The first was William Godwin, 1756 to 1836, who in his Enquiry Concerning Political Justice, published in 1793, set out the anarchist case against government, the law, property, and the institutions of the state. He was the partner of Mary Wollstonecraft and the father of Mary Shelley, and was an heir of both the English tradition of radical nonconformity and of the French philosophe. His book brought him instant fame, soon followed by hostility and neglect in the political climate of the early 19th century, but it had an underground life in radical circles until its rediscovery by the anarchist movement in the 1890s. The second of these pioneers was Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, 1809 through 1865, the French propagandist who was the first one to call himself an anarchist. He became famous in 1840 by virtue of an essay that declared that property is theft, but he also claimed that property is freedom. He saw no contradiction between